I will just say something in there now, so you can see where I mean. If you want to say hi and where you are in the world, say hello to your other attendees, that would be great. And it's always interesting for us. Hi there, Paolo, Marco, Sharon, Casper, Pasca, Milana, Marina, from all around the world I can see. So a real mixture of locations, which is great. Audrey, hi there. Yeah, feel free to say hi in the chat box. You should know by now as well that there's the Q&A box, which we will talk about, but I'll run through some housekeeping in just a second. So I think we'll probably get started now. There'll probably be a few more stragglers join us once we get started. So yeah, just as I was saying, as you probably know by now, all your mics are muted, so I can't hear what you're saying. If you want to say hello, say hi in the chat box, as you just have. And if you want to ask me a question as we run through today, use the Q&A feature, the Q&A sort of link within the Zoom control panel. If you type your questions in there, I will try and keep an eye on that as I present. And then if it's a really relevant one, I might answer it there and then. And if not, I might wait until we take a break in the webinar to sort of cover off questions. So, and please do ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask something, even if you feel it's a really obvious question. If you use the Q&A box, I won't say your name if you've asked something that you feel is really obvious. It's probably something that other people are thinking as well, but too embarrassed to ask. So that's absolutely fine. Happy to cover really basic questions as well. So a little bit more about myself. As I say, I know some of you may know me really from my role as a course leader if you've been in the Hilton group. But if you don't, and maybe for the Hilton group as well, just sort of my background, I started work in traditional marketing back in 1990. And it was really around 2003 that I started to specialize in digital specifically. And then over the last few years, I've done everything from consultancy to running my own agency. Then I was on the board of a larger agency. And then since 2018, I've been a partner at a consulting firm, Digital Works Group. And that's also soon after that when I became a course leader at Emeritus. And in fact, I first got involved with Emeritus by running this webinar on analytics as a guest speaker. And it just evolved from there. So, but I think the key point is my background in digital marketing is pretty lengthy. And throughout the whole time of my digital experience, I've pretty much been using Google Analytics. So I guess, you know, it wasn't around when I immediately started. It was sort of more available a few years afterwards. So it's about 12 years I've been using analytics. In the old days, you had to apply to have access. You had to kind of submit an invitation and go on a waiting list to be able to then be allowed to use analytics. But how I've used it really is in every possible way. So I've worked a lot on implementing analytics for code into websites and then configuring your analytics dashboard. And we're going to talk about some of my best sort of advice and experience there. But also the key thing I want to cover today is how to take some of the data in analytics and interpret and understand it from a marketing perspective, to maybe then come up with ideas or a hypothesis as to how you could improve your digital marketing, because Google Analytics is a tool and the data shouldn't control you. It's there to help you. Now, we're not going to cover the basics today of, you know, where you get the analytics tag or where you put it in your website. So if you do want help with that, I mean, you can just go to YouTube. There's loads of videos there on how you deploy the analytics code. So we're not doing a session covering the basics on that level. But instead, I want to look beyond the basics and really look at how to identify insights and opportunities, how to test your intuition. If you have an idea or a theory that you wonder, I wonder if my website visitors are doing this, how to test that. We're going to help look at how to help make big, broad strategy decisions and really just make better informed data-driven decisions. I'm going to try and do all of this and give you examples of how you do it in that agile approach that Professor Rogers has spoken about in the past, of this idea of kind of analysing and learning, adopting and reviewing in this constant process. And we're going to learn this in many different ways. I'm going to share what I think, in my experience, are some of the key features of Google Analytics. If you don't have time to become an analytics expert, where are the places you should look first? Okay, I'm going to share some of the most useful reports in analytics. I'm going to share some of my sort of real top tips and my own experience, some of my favorite parts to use and why, and shortcuts and hacks and that type of thing. Really, in essence, I'm going to show you what to use and also, weirdly, what not to use, what maybe you don't need to worry about. And that's because I often talk about the idea of the analytics iceberg. That's similar to an iceberg, where a small part of the iceberg is above the water and beneath the water is a huge mass. In the same way with Google Analytics, you can surface key data that's just above the surface, and there's a huge amount underneath the water, which can seem intimidating, and if you're not careful, can sink you, because you're not able to make, you know, the really good decisions because there's too much data, which is something we all suffer with these days in digital marketing. But it's not all about data. Another key thing I really want to try and get across to you today is that analytics is a great tool to use combined with creativity. And you might not think that those two go together, but if you have a hunch or a gut instinct or an idea, you can use analytics to follow up on that idea and see if it's actually true or not. So apply a bit of creative thinking as to what might be happening or what users might be doing on your website, and then use analytics to answer some of those questions. Because I find, and this is my first piece of advice for you really, but if you want to start using analytics, start thinking of the questions you want answered. You know, start with those key questions and use analytics to try and answer them, rather than looking at the analytics to try and identify answers to questions you don't already know yet. You can get quite lost in that way. So I wanted to share some examples of what sort of questions could we ask, and then how could we use analytics to answer those questions. And these are some of the most common examples that I use it for. And then how can we make use these answers to help us make marketing decisions? So the first question a lot of people say is, who is actually visiting our websites? Okay, so with analytics, we can discover all of this information about our website visitors. We can discover the location that they're based in, geographic, could be continent, country, down to city level. We can work out what device they're using. Are they on their smartphone or MacBook or whatever? Their demographics, what's their age and gender? What source did they come from? Did they come from organic search or social media? And which groups of these people are the largest? You know, so our typical website visitor is most likely to be like this. And how can we use this information? Well, once we have this data, we can then make decisions, for example, on all sorts of things. We could look at it and say, are we reaching the right people? If our product or service is targeting an older audience and our website visitors, according to analytics, are all younger, is our website reaching the right people? You can use that data to try and make decisions about what sort of content or tone of voice for your brand would be most appropriate. And when you start looking at things like source, how many visitors are coming from organic search, you can see how successful your marketing is. So if you're running search engine optimization campaigns, how much traffic are they generating from those sources? So that's a really basic level, who's visiting our website, what you can discover, and how you can make decisions. Another question you could ask your analytics is who out of our website visitors is engaging or converting at the best rate, okay? So using analytics, we can identify these things called audience segments and segments of increasing importance. So you can slice up your website visitors into here's a group of people who come to the website and do nothing and they just leave and they're not interested at all. And here's a different segment of people who are very engaged. And here's another segment of people who end up buying something on an e-commerce website. And you can build these segments and then look at what do they have in common and also what makes them different. So the people who come to your website and buy, what is special or unique about them compared to the people who don't buy? These are all questions you can answer with analytics, and I'll show you how shortly. If you have this information, then you can use it to make decisions on all sorts of things. But you might think, okay, is our targeting correct? We thought we were targeting the older consumer, but our segment analysis of the people who convert best and engage best is actually younger people. Should we change or update our targeting? Should we look at different activities and replicate them or scale them up or actually stop them? And also when you look at these segments, you can understand, okay, the people who engage the best actually come from these channels, but we're spending all our money in these channels. And you can shift your spend and your effort and your budget and investments. So another question we can ask analytics is, how have things changed over time? Because analytics data will go back to the date that you set up your analytics account. A common question I get asked during these webinars is, can you go back further in time? No, you can't. Analytics will only start recording data the day you set up the tag on your website. So if you haven't got analytics, your first job after today's session will be to get it set up and at least start recording data, okay? But once you have that history of data, we can look at how things have changed. We can discover performance changes. We could look at these such as conversions and sales or inquiries. And we can look at this versus year on year or versus the previous period. So last month versus the month before. And this morning I've just been doing reporting for a client. I'm on site with a client today on their last month reporting, for example, using analytics. You can track improvements in progress, you can spot emerging trends. And also this one is really helpful. You can use the historic data to identify your averages, which you can then use in lots of interesting ways. So then we can make decisions on, where we've got our averages and our benchmarks. We can use that to forecast and model future growth. So if you know your conversion rate is 1% and you're getting 10,000 visitors, and you want to kind of model what would happen if you get 15,000 visitors at the same conversion rate or 20,000 visitors at a better conversion rate, you can do all of these calculations once you've got your averages and your benchmarks from analytics. You can look at the success of marketing activities and campaigns versus the previous run, spot seasonal opportunities. Oh, I didn't realize at this time of year, demand increases here. And importantly, if you've got a plan in place, you can measure how well you're doing against your plan. So I've just seen a message that there's a problem seeing the slides. I think one person is saying they're having an issue. We did have a small issue just before we started today. Maybe if anyone else could let me know that they can't see them and I can try and reshare the slides again. It might be an internet or bandwidth problem, but yeah, if anyone else in the chat can let me know if they can't see the slides. If not, hopefully they will catch up. I will just say, actually, all the slides will be shared afterwards and today's session is being recorded. So if you are having some local technical problems, don't panic. We will be able to share everything afterwards with you. You won't miss out. Okay, so I'll carry on, and I'll just keep an eye on the chat as well, and just make sure, and maybe program support, if you're listening in, you could just check that you can see them okay as well. And the last question is, what are people doing on the website? This is another question, but we can ask analytics. Sorry, I just had a quick question on there about the slides. You will get a link, an email automatically from program support, as usual, after all the sessions, saying here's a link to it, and these slides will be available in Canvas, I think in the webinars section. Maybe take 24 hours and then you can click and download them from in there. Okay, so I hope that helps. So yeah, last question here. What are people doing on the website? So using analytics, we can discover common behaviors online, but this is a really important thing to use analytics for. You can map out your customer's journey on your website, or your funnel, if it's drawn like this, the journey towards conversion. And what are those key stages? So if it's an e-commerce website, it could be visiting the homepage, then looking at a product category, then looking at a product, then adding to basket, then going to the payment slide, and then checkout, and then thank you. That would be your user journey. And you can work out with analytics how many people reach each stage. And then also you can see how well users are engaging with your content. How long are they reading certain pieces of content compared to others? So if we have this data, we can make decisions on creating or improving new content. We could run a conversion rate optimization program to push more people through the funnel. You might even decide with this data that you need to restructure your website, or even try and improve experience across mobile, say, where people are having specific issues, or even rebuild the whole website and move it onto a new platform. So there's lots of quite big decisions that you can make based on insights you gain from Google Analytics. Let's get into the detail now, because that was really the context. I wanted to explain to you the benefits of using analytics and how you can ask questions. I want to get into the detail to show you some of the key techniques of ways to set up and use your Google Analytics to get the best results. And we're going to look at six key areas today. 6 might sound a lot, but some of these we'll cover quite quickly, and some of them will take a bit longer. We'll run through these, and then I'll share a big case study of how you can kind of use analytics in action. So the first one, we're going to talk through the basics, then I'll cover off segments, then I want to talk about conversion tracking, because it's really important. Attribution modeling, more complex subject, but hopefully we'll guide you through that. I want to talk about using analytics to help your reporting, and lastly, what you can integrate analytics with on other tools. So as we go through these, I'll sometimes show you these slides after a section where it's one of my key tips. So it's a bit of advice or a key tip, an extra bit of help for you to make analytics work harder for you. I should have said at the outset, I've tried to gear all the content today to cover all knowledge levels. I've assumed you probably don't have much access to analytics. Maybe you've got an account set up, but you don't really know how to use it. If you're an advanced analytics user, some of this you may already be familiar with, but even if you're advanced, hopefully there's some extra tips you weren't aware of. So let's look at the basics. So with analytics, your basic view is account, property, and view. The account is what you set up first, then you set up a property for your website, and then you create one or more views for that website. We're going to talk about the dashboard, how to change date ranges. I want to just run through the key engagement metrics, and then I'll show you the acquisition report and what that all looks like. So this is just a screenshot of the admin control panel in Google Analytics once it's already set up. you click the cog that says admin, and this is the type of screen that you see. And just talking about the iceberg example, you don't need to be an expert on every section. Some of these pieces I've never even gone into in years of using analytics. But the ones that I have used the most, I would say these are the primary settings. You've got the property settings, and obviously the account column is the column on the left, the property is in the middle, and the view is on the right. So in the property column, we've got the property settings. There's some bits you want to just tick boxes in there and just check over. You've got a quick link to the tracking info, and that's the snippet of code that sits on your website. Sometimes your web developer might update your website and accidentally delete the code that was there for analytics. I had a client do this just recently. Their developers misunderstood and took something out, and that's where you can go back and get the code again and re-provide it. And then you've got AdWords linking. So if you use Google Ads, you really should connect your Google Ads to your analytics, and that's where you do that. And then over on the right-hand side, we've got goals. We're going to talk about goals in more depth, but that's where, once you've got goals set up, if you've got a bit confused as to what you had organized, that's where you can go and check out what goals are set up at view level. So that's just the main pieces of the dashboard. But then at a secondary level, you might at view level look at those in the orange circles there. So you might look at filters, and a filter you can use normally to exclude visitors from a certain IP address. So if you have a couple of different offices for your business with lots of people using your own website, you can exclude traffic from your staff so it doesn't skew the data. Further down, if you've built segments, this is a quick and easy way to go back in and see what segments you've built there. Custom alerts and scheduled emails are really helpful features we'll talk about under reporting, where you can get analytics to send you an alert if something changes a certain way, and to send you regular scheduled emails of reports. This is where you could go in and find those reports in future. But I'll show you how you kind of do that in a moment. So this will be the main dashboard once you go into Google Analytics. Hopefully that looks familiar to you. This is you go into audience and then into overview. This is the typical place where you land and where you start in Google Analytics. And just the key things I would pick out here would be, as I say, the overview section. That's where I normally like to start off. And then within here, we've got the date range up at the top there. And you can do all sorts with the date range. You've got quick presets for the last 7 days or last 30 days. And then you can set the comparison date range to the previous period or the previous year. We've got then these key engagement metrics. And there's 3 main engagement metrics I would look at in any analytics account. The number of pages per session. So that's for each session of someone coming to the website, how many pages do they look at? 2.84 in this case. And then the average duration, how long do they spend on the website? And the other piece of engagement data I look at is what's called the bounce rate. Okay. Now, a bounce in analytics is where someone comes into your website on a landing page, they look at that page, but they don't visit any other pages in your website, and they leave from the landing page they arrived in. So they bounce in and bounce out again. And generally, a high bounce rate is seen as a bad thing. A bounce rate, it used to be over sort of 50%, but now Google would probably advise 25%. If your bounce rate is higher than that, you might want to think about how well your website is engaging and try and bring that bounce rate down. But here's the first of my top tips. As I say, over 50% bounce rate usually means poor engagement, but sometimes if you have a single page view and a high bounce rate, it means the user has got what they needed. So imagine if someone comes into your website to answer a question, they read a blog post or an article on your site, it's done its job, it's answered their question, they don't need anything else, and they leave, that might not always be a bad thing. It could show your content is being very effective at answering a question. So let's look at the acquisition reports in analytics as well. This is one of the most common things that I look at on, several times a day, many times a day. And in the acquisition report, we can compare different sources of traffic, whether it's direct or referral. It could be organic search, or it could be paid search. Those are the main channels. And we can compare these channels over different time periods and see how well they're performing. What does this look like? Well, this is a screen recording that I made earlier. And firstly, you can see me changing the date range there. And I'm comparing a date range to the previous year. So now you can see blue and orange data. And I'm looking here at various different metrics like the sessions, etc., and all the engagement metrics. But I'm going to close down the audience tab and open the acquisition tab and go to all traffic, source and medium, which is my favorite report in here. So now you can see, in this case, Google organic, the number, or Facebook, for example, and we can see the year-on-year difference in sessions. Organic is up 3.6%, but this shows for source and medium. So I just simplify it slightly by clicking just medium. And here we can see organic search is up 3% on previous year, referrals up 130% though. So you can start to see here by combining the date range with this acquisition and source medium reports, you can start to see how you can start to extract some helpful data out of analytics. Don't worry if you couldn't keep up with that. The recording is in the slide deck, which will be shared afterwards. So let's look at the second of our 6 key areas we're going to sort of talk about today. And this is about segments, which are really powerful in analytics. So I know we've talked about segments within the course itself. You may recall, I think it's covered under the customized strategy, where Professor Rogers talks about the importance of segmenting your users. So you can then customize different features or products or services or communications to different segments of users. And certainly when I kind of review the responses for the Hilton group, most people thought about different segments around sort of demographic or geographic, that type of thing. And that's the classic approach. People segment their users based on who they are. And you can certainly do that in analytics using demographics, where they are in the world, what device they're using, that type of thing. But also another great way to segment is based on what they're doing. So, a user could be based in the US, and on one visit to your site could be highly motivated to do one thing, and on a different visit, they could be motivated to do something else. So it might be you want to segment based on what people do, which could be around engagement, behavior, or what sort of actions have they completed on your website. How engaged are they? What are they doing? What content are they reading? These are all different ways of segmenting your users. Now, analytics, my screen's gone a little bit slow, bear with me. Here we go. Analytics lets us slice up our data into different segments that we can come up with, and then we can compare data between segments. And also, using segments can really help improve and speed up reporting. I've got one client whose website attracts visitors from all around the world, but only users based in the US can buy anything on the website. So we create a segment of US only visitors and use that for reporting to get a more accurate conversion rate because it's not fair to include everyone from around the world because they can't actually convert on the website, as an example, and that improves the accuracy of your reporting. Another great way to use a segment is to test a theory. I wonder if visitors who are on a mobile and coming from organic search convert better from someone on a desktop and coming from direct traffic. Well, let's find out. I've got a theory. Let's make a segment of both and see what insights we can identify. And another use of a segment is to convert to a retargeting audience. So this is a clever feature of Google Analytics. If you've linked it with Google Ads and use retargeting campaigns, you can make a segment first, get historic data, because I should say, when you make a segment, you get immediate historic access. So you can make that segment first, see how many people are in it, and then quickly, with a click of a button, convert that into a retargeting audience to use in a Google Ads campaign. So a really good way to test out an idea. So a couple of points about making segments and the admin around them. When you create a segment, a new one, well, actually, when you want to use a segment, there's some already set up for you in Google Analytics. These are what we call the system segments. There's some shared, so people have built segments that you can import into Analytics, or you can create a custom segment. Now, if you're creating a custom one, always make sure that you make it in your own view, because if you have access to lots of analytics accounts, the same segments start showing up everywhere. It's just a housekeeping piece of advice. And also, if you create a segment in an existing view, that way you'll get the historic data, but only in that view. You can't get segments to work across different views. And when you create a segment, you can use so many different rules and conditions. There's multiple conditions and behaviors that you can select, an almost unlimited number, really, of anything that's in Analytics you can use to build a segment. Here's an example of making a segment. So you just click Add Segment at the top, and then the red button, New Segment. Okay. Now, this is a little example I made. I'm going to change the segment to see just in this view, that housekeeping point I mentioned earlier. And now I'm going to set some conditions. Now, my first condition, there's all of these listed in here. I want this first condition that users in this segment must have come from a medium of organic traffic, organic search, or from CPC, which is cost per click or pay per click advertising, SEM. So those are two conditions, either or, and I want an extra condition for this segment. So these users came from organic or paid search, and I want them, the device must contain, let's say exactly match actually, mobile. So I've built this segment of mobile users from organic and paid search, and you can see how quick that was. You can also see how Analytics will prompt you with different suggestions based on what you start typing. Now, actually, I want to exclude something now. So I've added another condition, but this time to exclude, and I'm choosing a conversion goal, which I know we haven't talked about yet, but I'm choosing an important goal for this website, goal 16. And what I want to say is exclude anyone who has a count for this conversion of 1 or more. So basically what I've said is users who come from paid or organic search on a mobile, but who have not converted for goal 16. So I would call these search, mobile, non-converting. Okay, I name my segment, save it for future use, and you can see already how many users it's estimated would be in that segment. And now in orange, I can see the segment on the graph, but let's just go have a look at a more basic report just to make it a bit easier to see. And we can see 17.3% of my users fall in this new segment, and every metric now has 2 graphs, one for all users and one for my segment. You can see the engagement metrics and how they all vary, And I could go through every report in analytics and see data for all users and also my segment to help me really kind of understand how those users perform compared to the average. Now, my tip here is something we touched on earlier, which is with a segment, you can convert it once it's created into a retargeting audience. Now, why this is really helpful is if you want to build a retargeting audience for a segment, you normally have to wait for it to get big enough and test to see if there's enough people in it. If you do it this way, you can test immediately based on historic data, how many people would be in this audience. Is it worth making it? Yes, convert to retargeting audience. Just saves a bit of time waiting around. So the third area, just check how we're doing for time. Yep. We'll talk about conversions now, because this is, if you're running a website, you shouldn't do any digital marketing unless you can track the conversions, okay, in my opinion. And it's amazing how many people don't have conversions set up. So let's talk about how we do that in analytics. There's three main types. There's events, there's goals, which is the most common one, and there's e-commerce tracking. So let's run through these quickly. Events, you normally need to use a tool called Google Tag Manager alongside your analytics to create the events and feed them into analytics. But normally they're the smaller micro steps on a website around user behavior. Things like how many people scroll down a page and scroll how far, and people who click on links or buttons within your website, who start clicking in certain fields within the forms, or people who start watching 50% of the videos you've got embedded on your website. So they're not conversions, but they're sometimes the steps towards conversion or signs of engagement. Now, it's not essential to use events, okay? If you can get them set up with Tag Manager, great. But what is essential is to set up goals. Now, there's two types of goals, what I call sort of micro or soft goals, and then macro and hard goals. Micro or soft goals are those small steps that on our user journey or in our funnel that lead towards conversion, okay? On an e-commerce website, looking at a product page could be a soft goal, or add to basket would be a soft goal. And then our hard goal is the most important one. So actually buying something, that would be a macro or hard goal. So you would have fewer hard goals, but you might build lots more soft goals around the smaller steps that lead to a hard goal. Goals in analytics are normally built based on when someone reaches a specific URL. And that's normally the thank you or confirmation page in your website. I describe it as the elusive thank you page because very often, unless you've bought something on your own website yourself, it's quite hard to find out where someone ends up after they buy something. But that's the URL on your website you need to find to set up a goal for that conversion. So when you build a goal, you can, and this is optional, you can tell analytics these are the common steps that lead up to that goal. So you can build out the funnel of the other pages involved. So this means that you can then view data of how many people drop out or progress from one stage to another. Or you can build separate goals for each individual funnel stage. So you can, so for example, you could build one goal for an e-commerce purchase and all the steps in the funnel are add to basket, view product, or you can build separate goals without funnels, but a separate one for each of those actions. Add to basket has a goal, view product has a goal, checkout has a goal. If you have separate goals and you're using Google Ads and you're using automated bid strategies like enhanced PPC, cost per click, you can use these separate goals and feed them into your Google Ads. And Google Ads will use them as part of its machine learning to help make better targeting decisions. So that's just something to think about if you're trying to choose which option is best. This is an example of what a funnel, I've used the first option here. So this is a conversion built out on a website with all the steps that lead towards it. And you can see this is the sort of graph you can get out of analytics then. And you can see the green graph is the number of people who moved from one step to another. And you can see in this process, it's not performing very well because we've got only 8.6% of people going from the first step to the second, and then 22 to the second step to the third. And conversion rate optimization could be a strategy that this website uses to improve the numbers of people moving from one step to another. So the third and final part of conversion is called e-commerce tracking. And obviously this only applies to e-commerce websites. If you can set this up, it means you can import data from your checkout, from your baskets. You can import more of that data into analytics. So it gives you more revenue from each channel or source and a lot more data around products and SKUs and product categories and that type of thing. It's not essential. And it's quite difficult to set up. You normally need a web developer to help you configure this. But if you are in e-commerce, it's worth having a look at that. So number 4 out of our 6 key areas. I'm just going to try and speed up slightly on this one. This is quite a complex subject as well, actually, though. It's about theory. It might be something you want to go and read about afterwards a bit more. But it's about this idea of attribution and what is it and how can analytics help us understand it. So attribution is this theory around which channels are being given credit for contributing towards our conversions, because we set up our goal conversions in the previous step. And if we understand which channels, and by channels I mean organic search or paid search or social media or emails, if we understand which ones are driving the conversions better, we can work out where we need to spend our money better. Yeah, makes sense. So these days in digital marketing, we now need to look beyond what's called the last click attribution model. And what does this mean? Well, the last click model says that all the credit for a conversion is given to the last channel that was clicked on before that user converted. Whereas there's a different sort of conversion model around assisted conversion says, no, actually, I'm going to take the value of this conversion and I'm going to split it up and I'm going to attribute it across the last channel, but also all the other channels that we used before that. These were assisting channels. These assisted with the conversion, even though they weren't the last way that someone found the website. I hope that makes sense. It's often when I explain it to clients, it's a bit of a light bulb moment because you often find assisting channels are things like social media or display advertising or organic search. And then the user will leave your website and come back again through another channel, such as if they signed up for email or direct or through a retargeting campaign, and then they convert. And it's just understanding the role of all the channels in the process is really important before you make significant decisions. This is just a quick cartoon. I'll let you have a quick read of that about attribution. So whilst this cartoon is talking about the physical world as well as digital, I think it makes the point well. There is a danger if we only use the last way someone found our website before buying, in this case, or mobile, and ignore all the other things that they saw or experienced on their user journey and not give any credit to them. Otherwise, we won't be spending our budget properly. I just normally tell a quick case study here, but we're a little bit short for time, so I'm going to skip this for today. But it was just a story about a travel website I worked with who had this sort of challenge. So attribution in Google Analytics, actually there's a built-in report available that you can select for different types of conversions, and it will show you the true attribution for each of your channels. And you can look back over a different period of time because it depends on your website. I've worked with some where the attribution window is really short. People will first visit the website and decide and then buy it within 36 hours. Whereas some people will visit a website and come back lots of times over, say, 90 days. And that's a different extreme of kind of conversion window. So to find this, you go into conversions and then assisted conversions in the tabs on analytics. And I've got lots of goals on this account. So I'm just going to choose 4 of the most important goals here and apply those. Okay, conversion goals. And you can see my 90 days prior to conversion there is already set. That's fine. Scrolling down now, I can see for each of my channels here, data for both assisted and direct conversions. So direct is where this channel was the last way they found the site. So looking at organic search, that had 588 direct conversions, but 306 assisted conversions, where people visited the site through organic and then went away and came back through a different channel, as I've just highlighted there. So you might say organic only did the 588 conversions, but actually it helped with an extra 300 conversions. So it's maybe more important than you thought amongst your channels. So that's the value of attribution. Let's now just cover these last couple quite quickly. Measuring results. So as a reporting tool, analytics is really helpful. You can export PDFs and spreadsheets of pretty much anything that you find in analytics, but you can also schedule email reports to send you those spreadsheets and PDFs on a regular basis. You can set up an email alert so that, let's say, organic traffic drops versus the previous year by more than 10%. Analytics will email to tell you, warn you. And you can use something called annotations as well to log key events outside of your sort of digital activity. Now, in my old agency, in the team, we used to have this motto: don't irritate, annotate. So annotations are really helpful timestamps. So it means when you go back in future and you want to try and remember, when did we relaunch our website? Or when did our radio campaign go live? Or when did we exhibit at that trade show? You can annotate these events in Google Analytics and see what impact they had on your digital behavior and on your analytics data. This is just a quick screenshot of how to do that, but I'm going to skip that for today just as we're a little bit short on time. And lastly, integrations here. I've ranked these in terms of ease and importance. Now, the easiest and most important to link is Google Ads. If you're using Google Ads, you must link it with analytics. And this means that you get full PPC data shared into your analytics account. But you could also link Google Search Console. It used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. It's a really good, helpful tool if you're focused on SEO and organic search, and it will pass some data back into analytics. Because a few years ago, Google switched off seeing what search terms were sending you traffic in analytics. If you link to Google Search Console, it might replace some of that data. Google Optimize is a really cool free A/B testing tool, but also, so you can use it for experiments and conversion rate optimization programs. You can even use it to personalize the experience for different visitors, totally free. I could talk for a whole session on Google Optimize. It's such a helpful tool, so go check that out. But that will integrate with your analytics as well. So you can use goals in analytics to measure which version of your test is most successful. And lastly, we mentioned this before, Google Tag Manager. This is pretty complex to set up. You probably need a techie or a developer to help you do that, but that helps you set up custom events within your analytics. Oh, and not lastly, your CRM, your customer relationship management system, something like Salesforce Marketing Cloud or Zoho. It's really rare people manage to achieve this, but you can connect that with your Google Analytics. And that way you can pass data you collect in your CRM, such as from your inbound call center, record it in your CRM, and that will pass back into Google Analytics for you. So I'll pause for a second and I'll just put a shout out to say if anyone has any questions. Now will be a great time if you want to go back over anything I've mentioned, because then after this, I'm going to show you a quick case study and then we'll kind of wrap up for today. A quick question. Is it possible to get data from Google Analytics to my BI system in a real time frame, your business intelligence system? That is a good question. I think there is a Google Analytics API that might allow you to do that. I know there's certainly, I should have mentioned it earlier, there's certainly real-time data in analytics. It's a sort of interesting, but not that essential, but it shows you in real time who's on your website, what they're doing, where they come from. There's a real-time report in analytics already. But if you want real-time connection between analytics and BI, what you could do is look at a website called Zapier. It's spelled Z-A-P-I-E-R. I'll put that in the chat. There we go. So Zapier is really cool. If you just punch in Google Analytics into Zapier, there are so many connectors and integrations available for free that will connect up your analytics with lots of different things. In fact, I should add Zapier to the slide we were just talking about with integrations, actually. So that could be a good place to look at. And then whatever BI system you are using, you can see if it's already linked in with a Zap from Zapier, and then you might be able to link the two together. Any other questions? Pop them in there now or over the next few minutes. I'll have another quick chance right at the end to answer any more questions. So, let's look at bringing all this together. I want to show you a screen recording. Before I do this, I'm just going to close some of all these windows here. I can't see another question come in, but we'll answer that one at the end, just so I can see this screen recording a bit more clearly. So I want to share a case study with you now, a screen recording I'm going to talk you through. And this is a real life case study that I recreated and did a screen recording of to use with this webinar, okay? And this was from a previous experience sitting down with a former client that was a non-profit, a charity website. And they were interested in finding more high value users, okay? And so we were talking about analytics and looking at the data, and we were trying to talk about their targeting. Is their targeting correct? What channels should they be using more of, more paid, more organic? Really just starting with some basics. Who are the most important people? Where do they come from? So we talked about right at the start, asking questions and trying to answer them with analytics. So we thought, well, let's start with organic search. Let's see, who are they? What do they do? Okay, and we looked at the analytics together in this meeting. So this is what we did. So this is kind of recreated. So we went into analytics, and at the time we would have chosen a date range of the last 30 days because we wanted a recent example of what's happening on the website. And we went for systems segments here, one that's already been built, and chose organic traffic because that's already there in the system section already. Okay, so we thought, let's have a look at organic traffic. And we can say, okay, that's about 35% of our visitors in the last 30 days are from organic. So that's quite a large proportion, more than a third, okay? But how well do they convert? So we'll go into the conversions and goals section now. And let's choose the goal that in this case was most important, which actually, yeah, child sponsorship for this charity, that was the most important goal. And let's look at the goal conversion rate. All users is 0.32, but from organic traffic, it's higher, it's 0.43%, which is interesting. Not that surprising because we often find organic traffic converts quite well. So we're like, okay, well, who are the users in our organic segments? We've gone now to audience and demographics, and we've gone in the overview here, okay? And what we're looking at actually is that for all users, there's a fairly even spread of ages, but actually 27.8% of all users are aged 25 to 34, but from organic traffic in orange, that jumps up to nearly 35%. So organic users are more of them are from this younger age group. Okay, so we thought that was interesting, and I'll explain why later. So then we built a segment, and this is one I built earlier to use for this demonstration. So we built a segment of those people, organic visitors aged 25 to 34. So you can see they have a green one there, and they're all in that age group because we've built that custom segment. So I'm going to back into conversions now, and let's see how this segment converts. And that's interesting. Our organic younger, we could call them millennials, our organic millennials convert at 0.5% versus the 0.32% average. So this slice of users in organic search are converting now quite a lot better than average, okay? So then we were wondering, well, where are they coming into the website? So we've gone into behavior and landing pages, which tells us what pages people use to enter the website. Now, this is a common feature you sometimes see in analytics. If you've got too many segments applied, reports get quite confusing. So let's take some of these segments off. Let's remove all users, and let's remove organic traffic. And let's just leave our age 25 to 34 organic visitors. And let's put on the conversion goal for child sponsorship. And let's now look at some of these conversion rates for landing pages. And immediately we can see if people enter the site in this segment from contact us or child sponsorship, look at those conversion rates. They leap up to 1.4% versus what we saw before, which was 0.5%. So that's starting to get really interesting. You're starting to smell an insight now, an opportunity. This is a seam of really high converting users we've discovered. So let's look at what device they use, because they're millennials. We're going to assume they're on mobile maybe. But weirdly, this report tells us, and let's bring back the average of all the users so we can compare. This report is telling us that our organic millennials are actually 70% are on desktop versus the average of 42% on desktop, which feels really odd. We'd expect them to be on a mobile. So in summary, what have we just discovered there? We've just discovered that organic sessions convert better than all users. That's not a big surprise. But we've discovered our organic users are much more likely to be aged 25 to 34 than average. Okay, that's interesting. But also that segment of those organic 25 to 34s, they convert at an even higher rate than the average. And strangely, they're more likely to be on a desktop. So that's what we just discovered in 5 minutes of cruising through the data and just being curious and asking questions. Now, why is this significant? Well, the big reveal here is this charity's whole strategy for the last few years and all of their investment has been targeting an older age group of 35s to 54s. So it's almost like these younger millennials have been gained by accident. So this data could be used to really challenge their whole strategy. The next steps might be checking lifetime value, see if that matches, going and reviewing your SEO strategy to attract more younger users, targeting younger users on paid channels, but also investigating that strange high desktop, low mobile issue. Is it because of mobile SEO? We did actually find out that was a reporting issue. So in summary, and before I just cover off the last question, because we're kind of wrapping up now for today, Google Analytics has so much data, a wealth of data, especially if you set it up properly. And as you've seen, you can use it to test theories, identify trends. We can measure, report, compare, and benchmark. We can use it to model how future marketing could look. We can use it to support us being agile and being iterative and going and checking what's working and how well is it doing every few weeks or every month. And we can use it overall to make better marketing and business decisions. So future support, obviously today's content is going to be shared around. I'm very happy to answer general follow-up questions after today, as I know we don't have too much time. I'm even happy to have a quick look of your analytics setup if you're having issues with it, and always happy to discuss wider digital marketing. We did have one more question coming on the Q&A, which was about Google Optimize, the tool I mentioned earlier for A/B testing. The A/B testing tool, they've asked, is it on which channel? Facebook, for example. So basically, it lets you run A/B tests on your website, but you can target it to visitors from different channels or on different devices or in different locations. So yes, you can use it to target visitors from Facebook to your website, but not run tests on Facebook itself. So I hope that answers that question. So just check it. Oh, we've just gone 1 minute over time here. So I will finish off by saying a huge thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found that useful. I know I've thrown lots of information at you. Go back, make use of the deck and the screen recording at leisure. Try and recreate some of those examples in your own analytics account and setup. If you do want to get in touch, probably LinkedIn is the best way. Find me on LinkedIn, but do make sure you put in your connection request, add a note and say you're from Emeritus, just so I know who you are, because I get a lot of LinkedIn requests and don't always get time to accept all of them. So I hope that's been useful, and I hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world, and speak to you all soon. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. Thanks, everyone.